Hello. You think you know what tiredness is? You think you have an idea of what hard work really means? Everything you know about pain, humiliation, and meaninglessness is child's play compared to the reality I am about to show you. But before you get comfortable, make sure to like this video and subscribe to the channel and let me know in the comments which city you're watching from and what time it is for you right now. I'm really curious to see who's joined us. Now, settle in and get comfortable. We're about to begin. You do not remember the last time you woke up rested. Not that it matters. Sleep here is never a sanctuary, just a thin gray veil that sometimes covers the aching joints, the dull headache, and the weight of days stacked upon your bones. You open your eyes long before the sun even dreams of the horizon. The world is black, thick, and silent, except for the sounds of bodies shifting nearby, snoring, moaning, the shuffling of rough feet on rougher planks. The chill of night is stitched into your skin, and the sour, sour smell of sweat and old rags fills your nose. The blanket that covers you is not a blanket at all, but a threadbare piece of sackcloth that does nothing to keep out the cold or the damp. If you are lucky, you have a corner of the wooden floor to yourself. Most nights, you simply try not to roll over someone else. The darkness feels endless, a soft, heavy thing pressing down on your chest. But then, always, the sound comes. The iron bell outside, hanging from a crooked wooden frame, ringing 3 times, 4 times, again and again. The bell is not for beauty, not for ceremony. Its purpose is simple, brutal, and unchanging. It calls you to the fields before the world is ready to see what will be done to you. You drag yourself upright, every muscle protesting. Your back is already sore, your legs stiff, your mouth is dry, and your stomach twists with hunger. The ache is old and familiar, so constant it feels like a part of your body, a fifth limb. It never leaves you, not in the cold, dark hours before dawn, not in the white hot agony of midday, not in the moments before you drift off into a broken, restless sleep. You have learned to move quietly so as not to wake anyone else, though you know, of course, that they too are waking one after another, a chorus of silent, tired movements. You get dressed in what passes for clothing, a shirt that was once white, now brown and gray with age and filth, and trousers that sag on your hips. Both are made of rough material, burlap that scratches your skin until it becomes numb. Shoes, if you have them, are full of holes and barely hold together. Most days you go barefoot, your soles tough and calloused from years of hard earth and sharp stones. You tie a frayed strip of cloth around your head to keep the sweat out of your eyes. Not that it helps much. Outside, the world is cold, damp, silent. A mist rises from the fields, curling between the cotton plants and the shacks. The big house looms in the distance, its windows dark and silent. Somewhere in the trees, a bird makes a sleepy sound. You look around at the other cabins, some with thin lines of candlelight showing under the door. The air is thick with the smell of mold and wood smoke. There is no time for conversation, no luxury of morning rituals. Someone coughs, someone spits into the mud. The bell is still ringing. The sound echoes off the trees, a cold reminder that every morning is the same as the one before. You do not have a clock. You do not need one. The rhythm of your life is measured in bells and shouts and blows, never in moments of peace or silence. A line forms near the cookhouse. You join it, shoulders hunched against the cold, eyes downcast. The others are as silent as you, most too tired to speak, some too afraid. The sky is just beginning to lighten, turning from black to dark blue, but you know you will be in the fields long before the sun makes an appearance. Sometimes you catch a glimpse of the overseer, tall, pale, always alert. His boots are clean, his voice sharp. He is never cold, never hungry, never in a hurry. He has the only real power on the plantation, save for the master, and he knows it. He watches you all with the gaze of a man looking at tools, not people. Inside the cookhouse, breakfast waits. If you can call it breakfast. A pot of watery grits, just enough to keep your belly from shriveling in on itself. Sometimes a few beans, sometimes not. Bread on rare days, hard and stale. You wait your turn, holding out your battered tin bowl. No one says good morning. No one asks how you slept. The woman ladling out the grits does not look up. She, too, is already beaten down by the day, her eyes empty. You take your food outside and eat quickly, shivering as you stand in the mud. You have learned to eat slow, stretching each mouthful, but the taste never changes. You dream of butter, of honey, of fat slabs of meat, but you have not tasted such things in years, if ever. Your meal is gone before your hunger is. The overseer shouts, and the line forms again. There is no chance to linger, no pause for rest. Your hands are already trembling, your legs weak. The day has not even begun. Still, you move. You always move. Because here, on this stretch of muddy, unforgiving earth, to stop moving is to risk more than hunger or pain. To stop moving is to invite the whip, the fist, the punishment that waits for anyone too slow, too weak, too unwilling. You march with the others out to the field, the mud sucking at your feet, the morning mist chilling you to the bone. Above you, the sky is a pale promise, a reminder that today, like every day, will be long, hard, and utterly without mercy. You look at your hands, scarred, blistered, raw, and know that the day has only just begun. Breakfast, they call it. You suppose that is the polite word, the word they would use if they ever bothered to describe it in letters home to relatives in the North, or in long, rambling conversations after dinner in the main house. You, however, know better. This is not breakfast. This is simply the ritual of staving off death for another day. The food is ladled out with a motion that is almost mechanical, as if the hands that do the serving are not connected to a mind or a soul. In truth, the woman who stands behind the pot is barely present herself. Her eyes are dull and distant, her movements sluggish and resigned. She serves each bowl with the exact same portion, never looking up, never showing the smallest flicker of recognition. Her hands shake just a little, but no one notices except you. Everyone is too tired, too hungry, too eager to snatch up their meager share. The grits slop into your tin bowl, thick in some places, watery in others. Sometimes there is a stray lump, a fragment of cornmeal that escaped the boiling. If you are lucky, there is a bean or two floating on the surface, though luck here is a rare and capricious thing, and it usually visits others, not you. Sometimes, when the harvest is good, you might even spot a fleck of salt, but not today. Today, there is only the bland, pasty taste of grits, barely enough to fill the gap between your teeth, let alone the pit in your belly. You stand to the side, clutching your bowl in both hands. The metal is cold and slick with grease from a dozen meals past. There is nowhere to sit, so you shift your weight from one foot to the other, toes sinking into the wet ground. A thin breeze blows from the fields, carrying with it the scent of manure and something acrid, something burnt. You know this smell well. It is the perfume of the plantation, and it clings to you no matter how hard you scrub. You eat slowly, forcing yourself to chew each mouthful as many times as you can stand. There is no flavor, nothing to savor. The grits are sticky and bland, coating your tongue with a thin film that never quite goes away. You swallow and swallow and swallow again until the bowl is empty and your hunger is only slightly dulled. There is no pleasure here, no comfort, no warmth. Breakfast is not a meal, but a necessity, a chore to be completed before the real work begins. Around you, others eat in silence. A child clings to her mother's leg, eyes wide and unblinking, as she sucks on a crust of bread that looks as though it was baked months ago. An old man crouches by the cookhouse wall, his hands shaking so badly he spills half his portion into the dirt. No one helps him. No one can afford to. Every bite is a matter of survival, and mercy is a luxury you simply do not possess. There are rules, unspoken but ironclad. Do not ask for seconds. Do not trade or beg or barter. If you are caught with an extra crust or an extra handful of beans, you will be punished, sometimes with words, sometimes with blows, always with the kind of cold fury that leaves a mark. You have seen it before. The trembling hands, the tear streaked faces, the silent, stoic acceptance of pain that is as much a part of life here as hunger and toil. You have learned not to look too closely, not to linger too long. Eyes down, mouth shut, hands folded. Sometimes, on special days, there is coffee, thinned with water, bitter as old nails. On holidays, if you can call them that, there might be molasses, a slick, sweet trickle that sticks to your fingers and leaves you wanting more. These are the days you live for, the days you remember as you trudge through the mud and the muck. But today is not one of those days. Today, There is only the relentless sameness of cold, tasteless food and colder, tasteless routine. The overseer stands nearby, arms crossed over his chest, eyes scanning the line for any sign of disobedience. He does not eat with you, of course. His meals are served in the big house on fine china with silver spoons and crystal glasses. You have never seen the inside of that kitchen, never tasted the food that comes from those gleaming pots and pans. But you imagine it sometimes, late at night, when your stomach growls so loudly you fear it will wake the others. You imagine roast chicken and boiled potatoes, sweet cakes and creamy milk. It is a foolish dream, but it is all you have. Breakfast ends as quickly as it began. The bowls are stacked in a battered tin bucket to be washed later by someone whose hands are already raw and bleeding. There is no time to rest, no time to talk. The bell rings again, sharper this time, more insistent. You know what comes next. You know that the real work, the true test, is only just beginning. You wipe your mouth on the back of your hand, tasting the salt of your own sweat. You glance at the others, at the hunched shoulders and downcast eyes, and wonder if they feel the same hollow ache in their chests. Probably they do. Probably they feel nothing else. You shuffle forward, feet dragging in the mud. The overseer shouts, and you flinch instinctively, even though his words are not meant for you this time. It does not matter. The fear is always there, simmering just below the surface, waiting to boil over at the slightest provocation. This is breakfast. This is how you begin every day. You eat, not to live, but to survive. You swallow your food and your pride and your hope, and you march out into the morning, ready for another day of endless, thankless labor. You do not know how many days you have left. You do not know if tomorrow's breakfast will be any different. But you know this, you will be here in this line with this bowl until there is nothing left of you to feed. After the tasteless grits have disappeared and the last tin bowl clatters into the dented bucket, there is no lingering, no conversation, no pause for the slow luxury of digestion. The overseer's shout slices through the damp morning air. The voice is not loud, but it is sharp, practiced, the kind of voice you obey before your mind has even caught up with your body. You move quickly because you know what happens to those who move too slowly. Your muscles ache, but fear is always stronger than fatigue. You gather with the others in the yard outside the cookhouse, forming a crooked line that shifts and straightens itself out as the overseer's gaze falls on you. Nobody speaks, except perhaps a whispered prayer or a hoarse cough. Even the children are quiet. The only sounds are the rustle of rough clothing, the stamp of feet on cold ground, the distant lowing of cattle somewhere behind the sheds. The overseer paces in front of you, holding a thin ledger in one hand and a short whip in the other. The ledger is more precious to him than gold, for it holds the names and fates of every soul on the plantation. You know your name is in that book, spelled wrong, spoken wrong, but it is there. Your life reduced to a few black lines and a shaky scrawl, nothing more. He begins the roll call, a ritual as inevitable and pointless as the sunrise. He reads the names in the order that pleases him, sometimes alphabetically, sometimes by age, sometimes seemingly at random. Each name is a question, and each answer is the same, a single word, a mumbled here, or more often, silence. Some do not answer at all. You do not ask why. Maybe they are sick. Maybe they have died. Maybe they have run, foolishly hoping that the woods or the river will be kinder than this place. The overseer marks a line next to those names, mutters something under his breath, and moves on. Your name comes. You answer, careful to keep your voice steady, not too loud, not too soft, just enough to be noticed, never enough to draw attention. The overseer barely glances at you, already moving on to the next unfortunate soul. You have learned to be invisible in these moments, to draw no eyes, to offer no reason for him to remember you. When the roll call is done, the overseer begins assigning the day's tasks. He does not bother to ask your opinion, your strengths, your wishes. He knows what needs doing and who is available to do it. That is all that matters. The list is always the same, with only the names swapped around to break the monotony. You, today, are chosen for the far field, the one with the poorest soil and the thickest weeds. You do not sigh or curse or even frown. Such luxuries are for people who have choices. You simply nod and step aside, joining the small group that will work that miserable plot until the sun is high and your hands are numb. Others are sent to chop wood, to fix fences, to tend the animals. The children are herded into a smaller group and given their own chores, fetching water, chasing crows from the corn, picking stones out of the furrows. Even the sick and the very old are given something to do, for here idleness is a sin punishable by more than just harsh words. You have seen men whipped for pretending to be sicker than they are. You have seen women forced to scrub the laundry with raw, bloody hands until they fainted in the mud. Sometimes the assignments come with threats, sometimes with empty promises. The overseer might say that today's work is important, that if you do well, there might be extra food, or a scrap of new cloth, or even a kind word. You know better. You have heard these lies before, and you know that nothing good comes from hope. Hope is a poison, a cruel joke. It only makes the reality sharper, the disappointments deeper. The whip flicks out, snapping in the air as a warning. A young boy stumbles, nearly falls. The overseer stares at him, then looks away. Not worth the trouble today, apparently. Another man tries to protest, says his back is aching, his leg swollen. The overseer does not even let him finish the sentence. The whip cracks again, and the man bites his tongue, limping off in the direction he was told to go. As you wait for the others in your group to gather, you look around. You see faces you have known for years, faces you barely remember seeing before yesterday. Some are marked by old scars, some by new ones. You notice the empty spaces where others once stood. You do not ask what happened to them. Here, questions are more dangerous than silence. A bell rings again, this time sharper, more insistent. The morning is no longer cold. The sun is not yet visible, but you can feel its heat coming, heavy and suffocating. There is work to be done, and nothing, not pain, not hunger, not fear, will stop it from being done. You shuffle forward, your body already bracing for the hours ahead. The overseer calls out last reminders. No talking, no slacking. Finish before sundown or else. You do not reply. You have heard it all before. It is the song of your captivity, a tune you know by heart. You fall in line with your group, trudging out toward the far fields. The grass is wet. Your feet are already muddy. Someone sneezes, someone coughs, no one laughs, no one dares. The day has officially begun. Your name is checked off, your assignment given, your fate sealed for another round of labor. You glance at the sky, searching for any sign of hope, but there is nothing there, just a gray ceiling and the distant promise of pain. And so you walk away from the cookhouse, away from the shacks, toward the rows of cotton that wait for your hands and your sweat. The overseer's voice fades behind you, but his shadow remains, heavy on your shoulders. You know this walk. You know these steps. You know that today will be exactly like yesterday, and tomorrow will be no different. You do not have to wonder. Here, routine is a kind of prison, and you are its most loyal captive. The air between the cabins and the fields is different. It changes when you step past the last ragged fence post, thicker, somehow, with expectation and dread. You can feel your heart speed up, even if you are not afraid any more in the way you once were. Fear is just a background hum, like the buzzing of flies or the rasp of burlap against your skin. You walk with the others in a line, heads down, eyes fixed on the churned mud, moving toward the rows of cotton, each plant like a little set of claws reaching up from the earth. The overseer paces you from behind, boots striking a rhythm you cannot ignore. Sometimes he rides a horse, sitting high in the saddle, so that his shadow stretches over all of you, a dark patch moving across the morning light. He carries the whip openly. It dangles from his hand, as much a part of him as his voice or his hat. You know its sound and weight better than your own name. The rules are simple. Move quickly, speak only when spoken to, keep your eyes on your work. The rules are simple, and the consequences are simpler still. The first whip crack always comes early. Sometimes it is a warning. Sometimes it is an announcement. Sometimes it is just a mood, bad coffee, a poor night's sleep, a sick horse in the stable. The reason does not matter. The pain does. You try to lose yourself in the rhythm of the work. Reach down, snap the weed at the root, drop it in the basket, move to the next plant, repeat. The soil is damp, heavy, cold. The cotton bolls tear at your fingers, and the weeds fight back with invisible thorns. You hear the shuffling of others, the hiss of breath, the muffled coughs. But you keep your eyes low, low. Only the overseer is allowed to watch. Then, somewhere behind you, a sound, a short, sharp cry, swallowed almost at once. The whip has found its target. You do not turn your head. You do not need to. The memory of that sound is stitched into your mind 1,000 times over. Maybe someone stumbled, or maybe someone slowed. Maybe the overseer simply wanted to remind you that he is here and you are his to command. The next cry comes quickly, louder this time, more desperate. Someone else. The whip is a living thing, restless, hungry, always looking for the next back, the next set of shoulders, the next patch of skin to lay open. You do not know how many times the whip lands in a day. You have stopped counting, just as you have stopped remembering each individual pain. They blur together, one long thread of agony woven into the fabric of your life. Some wounds heal, leaving raised scars that itch and ache in the heat. Others fester, dark and swollen, a warning to yourself and everyone else. Keep moving, keep quiet, keep hoping you will not be next. But it is not just the pain that matters, it is the spectacle, the lesson. The overseer never punishes in secret. He wants you all to see. When the whip falls, every head bows lower, every hand moves faster. The air fills with a sharp, metallic scent, blood, sweat, fear. You feel it settle on your tongue, heavy and bitter. You know it will be there until nightfall. Sometimes, after a whipping, there are words. The overseer speaks in that slow, drawling voice that drips with false kindness. Let this be a lesson, he says, or you know what happens to lazy folks. You do know, you have learned. You have learned so well you can never forget. The memory of the whip lives in your bones, in the way you flinch at sudden noises, in the way you keep your back turned to the wind. You see it in the others, too. Some have faces hard as tree bark, unmoved by anything but the lash. Others have eyes like open wounds, always bracing for the next blow. The children learn fast. They learn to move quickly, to fade into the rows, to become invisible. The whip is a teacher, and its lessons are never gentle. You wonder sometimes if the overseer cares. You wonder if he sleeps well at night, or if the sound of crying and the smell of blood follow him into his dreams. Probably not. He is paid to keep the cotton growing, to keep the labor steady, to keep the fear sharp. He is paid to be the hand of the master, and his hand never tires. There is no one to complain to, no one to listen. If you are lucky, a wound heals. If you are unlucky, it festers. You have seen friends limp for days, weeks, even months, dragging themselves from row to row, each step a fresh agony. You have seen worse, too, the ones who cannot keep up, who cannot work. Sometimes they simply disappear. The fields are wide, the river is deep, the night is long. Sometimes you wonder what is worse, the pain of the whip, or the silence that comes after. The morning drags on, each minute measured in sweat and terror. The whip cracks again and again, marking time the way a clock does in the big house. Except here, every second is counted in suffering. You do not flinch anymore. You have learned how to hide the pain, how to tuck it away in the corners of your mind and keep your hands moving, your feet steady. By midday, the overseer's arm is tired, but the work is only half done. Your back aches, your fingers are bloody, your eyes sting with dust and tears. The fear does not leave, it never does. And so you keep moving, because the only thing worse than being beaten is being forgotten. Because the only thing sharper than pain is hunger. Because the only way through this day is to survive it. You keep your eyes on the cotton, your mind on the next plant, and pray silently, hopelessly, that the whip will not find you before the sun sets. Mud is the first thing you feel every morning, and it never lets you forget where you are. There are two kinds of days on the plantation: those when the earth bakes into cracked, sharp scales beneath your bare feet, and those when the ground oozes and clings to every toe, every heel, every calloused sole. Today is the latter. The night's rain has soaked everything, and each step makes a wet, sucking sound, as if the earth itself wants to swallow you whole. Your feet sink with every stride, and soon you stop trying to keep them clean. The mud is alive, cold, and sticky, climbing halfway up your ankles by the time you reach your row. Sometimes you wonder if your skin is turning to clay. The dirt works its way under your toenails and into the cracks between your toes. Later, when the heat of midday arrives, the mud will bake dry and hard on your skin, and you will curse it anew. At first, the morning is cool, only the hint of yesterday's sun in the air, but already you know it will not last. The clouds break apart in slow motion, revealing patches of blue sky that promise nothing but pain. When the sun rises, it does so with no mercy. Its heat drops like a curtain, heavy and solid, pressing you down. Sweat springs from your skin before you even start to move. The air thickens, growing heavier with every passing minute, turning your breath into a slow, labored thing. You try to remember a time when you were not wet or when you were not sweating. You cannot. There are only degrees of discomfort here: cold, damp misery in the morning, and then the blazing, suffocating heat that follows. Your shirt, already damp from rain and mud, clings to your body and makes every movement harder. The sun draws the water from the ground, creating a haze that sits just above the cotton, shimmering and mean. Insects come with the heat, clouds of mosquitoes that rise from the ditches and find every inch of exposed skin, biting and biting until your arms and legs are pocked with red, itching welts. Flies swarm your face and crawl into your nose and mouth if you let them. Sweat stings your eyes, mixing with dirt and grit until you cannot tell where the outside ends and you begin. But the real enemy is the sun. You feel it pounding on the back of your neck, burning through your headcloth, turning the world blinding white. Each year, you watch newcomers, people brought from other plantations, sometimes from the auction block in town, try to fight it, to keep a brisk pace, to finish their rows with pride. By the second week, they learn, as you did, that the sun is patient and relentless. It will burn the pride out of anyone, blacken your skin, and boil your hope. There is no whip to escape it except to die, and you are not ready for that. Not yet. Water is scarce, given in small rations from a barrel hauled out to the fields. The barrel stands at the far end of the row, guarded by a boy too young for the cotton, but old enough to understand the overseer's gaze. The water is always warm, tinged with iron and dust. You ration every mouthful, rolling it around on your tongue as if it were more than what it is. On the worst days, you catch yourself dreaming about clear, cold streams, about fresh wells, about rain you can drink instead of curse. Your hands never get clean. Mud cakes under your nails, settles into every crease, and mixes with the blood from the fresh scratches the cotton bolls give you. The tips of your fingers sting and burn, and when you flex your hands, you feel the skin split just a little bit more. Shoes are a luxury. Maybe you had some once, handed down from another, falling apart at the seams, the leather stiff and unforgiving. But now you are barefoot, and every stone, every broken stick in the mud is another reason to curse your fate. Your feet have grown thick and tough, but not enough to make the pain stop. You imagine you could walk on hot coals and not notice, but you always notice, you always feel it. Pain is the language the earth speaks here. There are moments, if you can call them that, when you almost forget the pain and the heat, when you move in rhythm with the others. The sound of hands pulling weeds and snapping bowls becomes a kind of music. For a heartbeat, it almost feels like you are somewhere else, someone else. Then the mud pulls your foot deeper, or a sharp stone bites into your heel, or the sun scorches your back, and the illusion shatters. Sometimes the overseer walks the rows, his boots leaving sharp, clean prints in the muck where yours have dissolved. He watches for anyone who moves too slowly, anyone who dares to pause to wipe the sweat from their brow. His presence is as heavy as the heat. He says nothing, usually, but his silence is a threat all its own. By midday, the mud has dried and cracked on your feet, forming a crust that you will spend the evening scraping away. Your shirt is soaked with sweat and filth, and your hands are trembling, but there are still hours left before even the hope of rest. You keep your eyes on your row. The sun climbs higher, and the world shrinks down to a narrow strip of dirt, weeds, and cotton. You know there is no escape from the mud or the heat. You just survive them, one step, one row, one burning hour at a time. You wonder if tomorrow will be better, but you know better than to hope. When the sun stands directly overhead, burning everything in its sight into an aching brightness, you know it is time for lunch, though the word does not mean what it means in stories. Lunch on the plantation is not a break, not a comfort, not a time to laugh or rest. It is a pause that is heavier than the work itself. A few moments between one punishment and the next. The call comes sharp and brief, a whistle, a shout, a single clang of the bell. You look up, blinking sweat and grime from your eyes, and see the others do the same, all turning as one creature to the edge of the fields. If you are unlucky, you are far from the barrel and the pail, and your trek through the thick midday heat is just another part of your punishment. If you are lucky, you get there before the water is gone, before the best spots in the shade are taken, though best is a relative word, and there is no such thing as shade that truly cools. You trudge over, dragging feet through mud that is now hot, sticky, and steaming. The overseer stands watchful as ever, one hand on his whip, the other shading his eyes as he scans for those who dare to move too slow, talk too loud, or sit too long. He is always just near enough that you can feel his gaze, but never so close as to be mistaken for one of you. He belongs to another world, a world with lunch that matters. A battered pail sits on a stump, surrounded by a half circle of silent, hunched bodies. Today, lunch is more corn mush, thin as broth with a few greasy streaks floating on the surface. Some days, there might be a cube of salt pork, or, if the overseer is feeling charitable or careless, a cold biscuit left over from the big house's breakfast. But those days are as rare as rain in a drought. Today is a day like most others, a spoonful of nothing, stretched as far as it will go. You wait your turn, trying not to meet anyone's eyes. Hunger makes you restless, but patience is the only law you can afford to obey. Someone coughs. A child tugs at her mother's skirt, begging for more before she has even gotten less. The woman does not answer. She knows better than to hope. The taste is always the same, bland, sticky, and heavy, sticking to your teeth and the roof of your mouth. If you are careful, you eat slowly, using the edge of your spoon to scrape every last bit from the sides of your bowl. If you are careless, it is gone in 3 bites, and the ache in your stomach returns even before you stand up. The food is never enough. It is only a marker, a brief line in the endless ledger of your hunger. There are rules here, too, as old and as permanent as the cracks in your hands. Never take more than your share. Never trade unless you are certain no one is watching. Never ask for seconds. The last rule is the hardest. Hunger makes fools of everyone, but the overseer does not tolerate foolishness. You have seen what happens to those who forget themselves: a slap, a shout, or, if the mood is especially dark, a beating right there in front of the lunch pail. The others eat in silence, shoulders pressed together, heads down. Sometimes you hear the soft sound of humming, a wordless tune passed from one to another, quieter than a prayer. Conversation, if it happens at all, is whispered and urgent. There are rumors, always rumors, about new arrivals, about runaways, about the price of cotton in towns you have never seen. The children try to play, their games quick and silent, always glancing over their shoulders for the overseer's boot. Lunch is a kind of reckoning. You count the bruises, the blisters, the cuts that have appeared since sunrise. You look at your hands, swollen and red, and wonder if you will make it through the rest of the day. Sometimes you wonder if it would be better to collapse right here and let the sun finish what the overseer started. But you know that is not an option. The world keeps turning, and you keep moving because there is no other choice. Water is passed around, barely cool, tasting of rust and old wood. It is precious, and you swallow it slowly, trying not to think about how much more you need. On bad days, the water runs out before everyone has had their fill. Then you must go back to work with a mouth full of dust and a head full of anger. If you are lucky, there is a scrap of cloth for wiping your face, a patch of shade to rest your head. If you are unlucky, there is nothing but sun and sweat and the sharp bark of the overseer's voice, driving you back to your row before you have even caught your breath. Lunch is over almost before it begins. The overseer stands, stretches, and looks at the sky as if he owns it. You scrape the last grains from your bowl, stand up, and prepare to return to the endless green rows that wait for you. Your hunger is not gone. It is just buried a little deeper for a little longer. You gather with the others, each of you carrying your own weight, your own pain, your own hunger, your own memories of meals that actually mattered. You look at the field, already shimmering with heat, and you know that there are still hours left before you can dream of stopping. Lunch is not a gift, not a comfort, not a relief. It is only another measure of the distance between what you are and what you used to be. It is the weight you carry back into the fields, heavier than any basket of cotton or armload of firewood. And so you go, shoulders bowed, hands trembling, back to the rows. The work waits for you, as it always does. Lunch is gone, and the day presses on, heavier than before. Lunch, if you can even call it that, is a memory almost before it is finished. You stand, bowl empty, legs stiff from squatting in the mud or perching on the roots of some ancient, crooked tree. Your muscles complain, but you ignore them. Hunger is still gnawing at you, quieter than before, but only because you have grown used to its voice. If you listen too closely, it will drive you mad. The overseer's shadow falls over the circle. There is no need for words. Everyone knows what happens next. You rise and shuffle into your row, moving like a body half awake. The air is thicker now, pressing in around your head and shoulders, humming with insects and heat and the weight of hours left to go. Even the trees seem to lean away from the fields, as if they know that nothing good happens here. The sun has climbed higher. It blazes from above, reflecting off every blade of grass, every white boll of cotton, until the world feels like the inside of an oven. The sweat rolls down your forehead, stings your eyes, soaks the front and back of your shirt until it sticks to your skin like a second, even filthier layer. You wipe your brow on your sleeve and taste the tang of salt and dirt. You reach, pull, bend, and stand. Every movement is a repetition of the one before. You do not have the luxury of changing your rhythm, not unless you want the overseer's attention. He patrols the rows, sometimes on foot, sometimes from horseback, the whip always visible, always in motion. If you falter, even for a moment, if you drop your basket, if you straighten up too soon, if you dare to speak, his voice is there, cutting through the air like a blade. Sometimes the voice is enough. Sometimes it is followed by the whistle and crack of the lash. Your hands are swollen, the skin at the base of your fingers torn from gripping the stems and yanking weeds free. The cotton plants scratch, the burrs bite, and in every so often you jab yourself so deep that you have to stop and squeeze the blood from your fingertip. You learn to work with one hand, to keep moving, because the row is never done. For every weed you pull, two more seem to sprout in its place. The field is endless, and so is the labor. You work in silence, surrounded by the same faces every day, men, women, children, all bent to the same task, all locked in the same slow motion battle against the sun and the earth. Now and then you catch a glimpse of a familiar face, a friend, a brother, a child. You cannot speak. There is no time for kindness. Only a quick nod, a half smile, a look that says, I am still here, before you each return to your own private struggle. Sometimes you catch yourself counting the rows, the plants, the baskets filled and emptied. You try to measure your progress, to find some sign that you are closer to the end. But the field always wins. For every row you finish, there is another waiting, and then another, and then another. The work is a circle, and you are trapped inside it. In the distance, you hear the clatter of tools, hoes, shovels, axes. Some are fixing fences, chopping wood, hauling water from the creek. The work changes, but the misery stays the same. You envy the children for their lighter burdens, but you do not wish for their place. Childhood here is just a shorter, smaller version of adulthood. No one is free from work, not for a single day. As the afternoon wears on, the heat thickens. The air hums with the sound of cicadas, loud enough to drown out the voices in your head. You lose track of time. You lose track of yourself. Sometimes it feels as though you are dissolving into the field, becoming just another tool to be used and discarded. If you are unlucky, your mind wanders. You remember things you would rather forget, a taste of something sweet, a song sung quietly in the night, the touch of a hand you have not felt in years. Memory is dangerous. It slows your hands and breaks your heart. You force yourself back into the present, back into the rhythm of reach, pull, bend, and stand. Now and then, someone collapses. A child falls to their knees, too tired or too hungry or too hot to go on. A woman faints, and the others gather her up quickly before the overseer can see. If he does notice, he shouts and curses, maybe lashes out with the whip, maybe not. If he is in a good mood, he tells them to get up and keep working. If not, the punishment is worse. Water comes rarely, and when it does, you drink greedily. The barrel at the edge of the field is always too far away, and there is never enough to go around. Sometimes you catch yourself daydreaming about rivers and lakes, cool water flowing over your feet. But the only water you get is warm and cloudy, heavy with the taste of old wood and iron. You drink it anyway. There is no rest. If you stop, you are noticed. If you are noticed, you are punished. So you keep moving, keep working, keep your eyes on the dirt and your hands in the plants. The field is a world with only one rule: keep going, no matter what. You do not know how many hours pass. The sun never seems to move, and the work never ends. The overseer walks the rows, his boots crunching in the dry dirt, the whip trailing behind him like a snake. He says little, but his presence is enough. You work faster, harder, trying to outrun his gaze. When the light finally begins to change, just a hint, just a whisper of gold on the horizon, you dare to hope that the day is almost over. But you know better. The work will last until the overseer is satisfied, until every last row is cleared, every last weed pulled. Only then, when you are as empty as your bowl, will you be allowed to leave. And so you work, hour after hour, day after day, season after season. There is no finish line, no reward, no rest. There is only the field and the work and the long, slow crawl of time. Fear, you learn, is not an event. It is not a sudden jolt, not a flash of lightning. It is a constant, a background noise, an itch you can never quite scratch away. On the plantation, fear lives under your skin, in the soft places behind your ribs, in the back of your throat. It shapes every choice, every word, every breath you take from dawn to dusk, and even after. You do not remember the first time you saw someone punished. It is as if the memory was sewn into you before you were even old enough to speak. Maybe you were a child, watching through a gap in the boards of a cabin wall. Maybe you were new to the fields, back when you still believed that work alone could keep you safe. But soon enough, you learned the truth. Here, punishment is a language, and everyone is forced to become fluent. It is always the same routine: a mistake, a complaint, a moment of slowness. Any of these is enough. It does not matter if it was an accident or if your body simply gave out. The overseer decides, and the overseer is never wrong. You watch as someone is called out, separated from the rest of you, made an example for all to see. No one looks away, not even the youngest. The lesson is for everyone. Sometimes it is the whip, hissing through the air, snapping against bare skin, leaving welts that rise like angry rivers across a back. Sometimes it is the stocks, where a person must kneel in the sun, head and hands trapped, while flies and shame bite at their face. Sometimes it is even worse: denied food, forced to work twice as hard, locked away in a shed for the night. You learn to measure your life in these punishments, counting not the days that pass, but the days you manage to escape the overseer's notice. The fear changes you. You begin to move differently, to think in small, cautious steps. You watch the overseer out of the corner of your eye, always trying to guess what will anger him next. Sometimes he punishes for things you cannot control: a torn shirt, a cough, a patch of weeds that grew too fast for you to clear. You stop believing in fairness. You stop believing in mercy. The only thing that matters is staying invisible. The worst punishments are not always the loudest. Sometimes it is the silent anger, the cold, hard stare, the threat left hanging in the air, the knowledge that you are being watched. You feel it when the overseer circles the field, stopping just behind you, silent. You keep your head down, your hands working, your body tense and ready for the sting that may or may not come. The anticipation is almost worse than the blow itself. You see the way others change, too. The old ones grow quiet and closed, their faces blank as if carved from wood. The young ones learn quickly, their eyes always darting, never resting on anything for too long. Mothers teach their children to move fast, to answer quickly, to apologize for things they have not done. The children do not ask why. They see the consequences every day, everywhere. Punishment is never private. The overseer believes in spectacle. He wants everyone to see, to hear, to remember. Sometimes, after a beating, he will say, "Let this be a lesson to the rest of you," as if you could ever forget, as if you needed reminding. You see the bruises, the limp, the swollen faces long after the punishment itself is over. You smell the blood, hear the cries echoing in your mind even when the field is silent. At night, fear lingers. You do not sleep deeply. Every sound, a branch scratching the roof, a footstep outside the cabin, makes your heart race. You dream of being called out, of standing alone in the sun while the others watch. Sometimes, in these dreams, you cannot move, cannot speak, cannot even cry out. You wake up with your fists clenched, your mouth dry, the taste of fear bitter on your tongue. It is not only the overseer you fear. There are others, drivers chosen from among your own, made cruel by power, desperate to keep their own skins safe. Sometimes it is another field hand who reports you, hoping to avoid punishment themselves. Trust is a rare thing. You speak carefully, keep your secrets close, never say more than you must. The most painful punishments are those you never see. Sometimes a friend is there one day, gone the next. No explanation. Maybe they tried to run. Maybe they were sold. Maybe they simply could not take it anymore. You do not ask. Questions only bring attention, and attention brings pain. You learn to live with fear the way you live with hunger and heat and mud. It becomes part of you, a muscle you exercise every day, a voice that whispers warnings in your ear. Do not stand out. Do not slow down. Do not hope for kindness. Still, there are moments, fleeting, dangerous moments, when you wonder what it would be like to live without fear, to stand up straight, to speak your mind, to move without watching your back. The thought is intoxicating, but you push it away. Here, fear is as necessary as breath. And so you work, and you wait, and you try not to be seen, because you know that the overseer's whip is never far, that punishment is always just one mistake away. You do not dare to imagine escape. You do not dare to imagine justice. Here, on this patch of earth, survival means learning to live in the shadow of fear. There are hours in the field when your body moves, but your mind wanders far away. The world outside is all noise and pain and sweat, but inside you try to build something softer. The overseer cannot reach this place, not with his whip, not with his voice. In this private country, you try to remember what it means to be more than a pair of hands. Sometimes, when the sun burns and your back screams for mercy, You hum a tune under your breath, a melody you learned as a child, or maybe just one that grew inside you over the years. You cannot sing out loud. The overseer hears music as a kind of rebellion, a spark of life he cannot permit. But a hum is quieter than a sigh, and if you do it right, no one hears but you. Songs are memories in disguise. They carry you back to times before the field, before you belonged to the earth and the bell and the whip. You remember the voices of your mother and your aunties singing at dusk, their words flowing like water over the sharp stones of the day. The songs were stories then, of rivers and cities you had never seen, of freedom spoken in riddles, of ancestors who flew away like birds. You sing them silently now, using the words as a shield. Dreams come, too, mostly when you least expect them. Not just at night, when your body is too tired to move, but in flashes during the slow, endless hours of work. Sometimes you see yourself in another place, standing by a river that is not choked with mud, lying in tall grass with nothing to do but watch the clouds drift by. In these dreams, your hands are not blistered, your belly is full. You wear shoes that fit, clothes that do not itch. No one is shouting, no one is afraid. You let yourself imagine freedom, even though you know it is a dangerous luxury. Freedom comes to you in strange shapes: a road leading away from the plantation, a boat slipping quietly down the bayou, a door swinging open in the night. Sometimes you think about running. You count the miles in your head, plan the journey in the secret language of hope. But you have seen what happens to those who try: the dogs, the men with guns, the stories told in whispers about what they do to those they catch. Hope here is a razor blade, sharp, seductive, and deadly if you hold it too long. Still, you hold it. You cannot help yourself. It flickers in you, a stubborn little candle that the overseer cannot snuff out. Even on the hardest days, it lights up small places in your mind, enough to remind you that you are more than what they see. Some dreams are older than you. They belong to your parents, to their parents, passed down like beads on a string. In these dreams, you speak another language, dance another dance, live in a place where the sun is kind and the nights are soft. You do not remember where these dreams come from, only that they feel real in a way the field never does. Sometimes you share them with the others in code, half finished stories, sideways glances, a line from a song. You cannot say what you mean, but you understand each other anyway. There are days when dreams betray you, when your mind is too tired, your body too broken, and the gap between what is and what could be is too wide to cross. On those days, dreams are just another kind of hunger, a reminder of everything you will never have. You try not to think too much, try not to remember too well. You focus on the row in front of you, the next weed, the next basket. Survival means keeping your head down, not looking too far ahead. Yet, in the rare quiet moments, late at night maybe, or in the precious pause when the overseer's back is turned, you let yourself feel something like longing. You think of your family, those still here and those lost to the auction block, and you wonder where they are. Sometimes you picture them free, living in places you have only heard about, waiting for you to join them. The thought hurts, but it also comforts. As long as you remember, they are not truly gone. Stories are another kind of dream. They pass from mouth to mouth in the cabins, after dark, when the world outside is only a memory. Stories of clever men and brave women, of animals who outsmart their captors, of gods who punish the cruel and reward the faithful. You cling to these tales, shaping them in your mind as you work, repeating them to yourself as a kind of prayer. You know that dreams alone cannot save you. You know that in the morning the bell will ring and the world will demand your hands and your strength. But inside, in the place where the overseer cannot go, you keep your dreams alive. They are your shield, your secret, your stubborn refusal to become only what they say you are. In your inner world, you are whole, you are free, you are more than the sum of your pain, and that, some days, is enough to keep going. If there is a time when you feel the day's weight most, it is the hours after the sun has started its slow, reluctant slide down the sky. The light changes then, not so harsh and blinding, but softer, thick with dust and memory. In another life, in another world, this might have been your favorite time, a breath between labor and rest, a gentle winding down. But here, on the plantation, evening is just a longer shadow, another stretch of field to cross, another round of work to survive before the night claims you. The overseer's mood often sours as the sun lowers. Maybe he resents the coming darkness, or maybe it reminds him that even his power has limits, that the world does not bend to his will after nightfall. He patrols the rows with a kind of urgency, snapping at the slow, barking at those who dare to pause for more than a moment. The whip feels heavier in his hand, more eager to make itself known. You move faster, not because you have the strength, but because you know what waits for the one who lingers at dusk. The tasks are never quite done. As soon as one row is cleared, another appears. Sometimes you are told to gather fallen branches from the edge of the woods, or to patch a sagging section of fence, or to fill baskets with kindling for the kitchen fires. Your back is already bent, your shoulders raw, but there is no refusing, no protest, no hope for mercy. If you show signs of flagging, the overseer singles you out, a name barked into the evening, a glare that dares you to stumble. You are not alone in your exhaustion. Around you, the others move with the same broken rhythm, feet shuffling through mud and dust, hands numb and clumsy with fatigue. The children sag, blinking hard, as if they can keep sleep at bay just by wishing. The older folks are slower now, their faces locked in a mask of grim determination. Even the strongest among you, the ones who always seemed tireless at dawn, are hunched and quiet by sunset. The air grows heavier, not with heat, but with the promise of night. The insects grow bold, whining in your ears, crawling up your arms. Bats flicker above the trees, chasing the first fireflies. Somewhere, a dog barks, the sound thin and lonely. The world is turning, but here in the field, nothing changes except the color of the sky. Sometimes you let yourself look up just for a second. The sun is a gold coin sinking into a pool of blue and red. You remember stories of people who believed that the sun was a god traveling across the sky to rest in the arms of the night. You think of resting, of arms that hold instead of hurt, but the thought passes. The overseer's voice calls you back to earth. You finish your row, then another. Your hands barely feel the cotton anymore. They move on their own, haunted by memory, fueled by something deeper than willpower, something like survival or spite or the memory of a time when work had meaning. Each step is a victory, a small act of rebellion against the pain. As the light fades, the overseer grows more impatient. He calls out reminders: faster, finish your row, do not slack. You do not answer. No one answers. The only reply is the sound of hands on plants, feet in dirt, breath hissing between clenched teeth. Even the animals are quiet, as if they know better than to draw attention. The final work of the day is always the hardest. It is as if your muscles know how close you are to stopping, and so they begin to betray you, cramping, shaking, threatening to give out altogether. You push through it, not because you have hope, but because you have no other choice. Here, giving up is not an option. Here, every moment of rest must be stolen, hidden, paid for in pain. Sometimes, as you finish your last task, you catch a brief, fragile moment of peace. The sky is turning purple, the air cooling just enough to remind you what comfort could feel like. For an instant, you almost believe in tomorrow. But then the overseer calls your name, or the bell clangs from the yard, or someone stumbles and cries out, and the moment is gone. You gather your tools, what few you have, and trudge back toward the cabins. Your body aches with 100 different hurts, each one louder in the fading light. The path is crowded with others, all of you moving in the same direction, all of you moving as if you are already halfway to sleep. Evening is not the end. It is only a pause, a breath, a brief retreat before the night brings its own burdens. You look back at the field, at the rows you have cleared and the ones you have left behind, and you wonder how many more days, how many more evenings you will see before your body gives out. You do not linger. You do not dare. The overseer is still watching, still counting, still looking for one more reason to remind you that your life is not your own. So you keep moving, keep hoping for the small mercy of darkness, the soft promise of a night without pain. And in the deepening gloom, you remind yourself you have survived another day. Sometimes that is all you can ask for. When the last rays of sunlight finally slip beneath the trees, the call to return comes, not with the promise of rest, but as a kind of truce. The overseer's voice carries across the fields, sharp and impatient, herding you back toward the cabins as if you were animals who must be counted and penned for the night. You walk slowly, not daring to limp, though every step drives fresh pain up your legs. There is no triumph in surviving another day, only relief that it is over for now. The path from the field to the cabins is short, but feels endless. Mud clings to your feet, each stride heavier than the last. Others walk with you, silent, moving in single file. No one speaks unless absolutely necessary. Every word is spent already, every thought tangled with exhaustion. You have learned to save your strength for the small, private battles ahead, washing your wounds, nursing your hunger, finding a patch of floor to claim as your own. The cabins are not homes. They are wooden boxes stacked in crooked lines, patched with scraps of tin and tar paper, warped by rain and heat and years of neglect. Some lean so badly you wonder how they still stand. The doors hang open on broken hinges. The windows are little more than holes plugged with rags or stuffed with straw. The walls are thin enough that you hear the groans and murmurs from every cabin nearby, especially at night when everything else is quiet. Inside, the air is stifling. All the heat of the day is trapped under the sagging roof, mixed with the smells of sweat, damp earth, and mold. A single candle or oil lamp might burn if someone managed to save a stub from the master's cast offs, but usually it is just the dark. You move by memory and by touch, careful not to wake those who found a rare moment of sleep before you arrived. Your place in the cabin is as fixed as your place in the field. You share the floor with family, if you are lucky, or with strangers if you are not. Children huddle together, limbs tangled like roots, sleeping wherever they can. Old folks are given the best corner, though best means only that it is slightly less damp, slightly less drafty, slightly farther from the door that never quite shuts. Every inch of space is claimed and reclaimed every night. Sometimes, after a sale or a death or a punishment, there is a gap where someone used to lie. The empty space is a wound you do not name. If you have something to eat, scraps saved from lunch, a crust of bread hoarded from last week's ration, you eat it quietly, hidden under your shirt or in your lap. Most nights, there is nothing. Hunger is a familiar companion. You chew the inside of your cheek, drink a little water, and try not to think about the ache in your belly. Children whimper in their sleep, their dreams filled with food you cannot give them. The work of survival continues even after the overseer is gone. Some tend to wounds, raw backs, split knuckles, blistered feet. The lucky ones have a rag soaked in cool water. The unlucky make do with spit and hope. Mothers whisper to their children, telling stories in soft, secret voices. The words are old, older than the plantation, woven from memory and longing. They are magic, these stories, a fragile shield against the night. Privacy is a memory, not a reality. You dress and undress in front of others. Wash yourself as best you can with a rag and a bucket if there is water left. Every sound is shared. The sighs, the sobs, the short, bitter laughs when someone remembers something funny from a better time. Sometimes, late at night, someone sings, a low, wordless hum carried through the cracks in the walls from one cabin to the next. It is not joy, it is endurance. There are rituals, small and stubborn, that help mark the end of the day. You might brush the dirt from your hair, untangle your shirt, straighten your corner of the floor. Some kneel and pray, their words barely more than breath. You do not pray for miracles anymore. You pray for survival, for another day, for a pain that is less sharp than the one before. Sleep comes in fits and starts. The body remembers every blow, every hour in the sun, every insult carved into your bones. The floor is hard, the air thick, the dreams uneasy. Some nights you wake gasping, unsure if it was a nightmare or just the reality pressing down on your chest. You turn, careful not to disturb those beside you, and try again. The night is alive with sound, murmurs from other cabins, the shuffle of feet outside, the distant howl of a dog. You listen, always, for the one sound that means danger, the overseer's return, or the master's heavy step, or the cry of someone taken in the dark. You keep your ears open, even in sleep, and yet, in this crowded darkness, there is a strange kind of comfort, the warmth of other bodies, the press of familiar voices, the knowledge that, for now, you are together. Tomorrow, the bell will ring again. The overseer will call. The work will begin anew. But for these few hours, you are not just a field hand, not just a tool to be used and discarded. You are part of something larger, something stubborn and alive. In the cabin, in the dark, you remember this. You have survived another day. Sometimes that is enough. Evening in the cabin is a slow, careful thing, a ritual of low voices, whispered stories, and the quiet struggle to remember you are more than just a body that works and aches. When the overseer's voice fades into the distance and the last light leaks from the doorway, you settle into the only comfort you have, the presence of others who know exactly what this day has cost. There is no privacy, not really. Every sound in the dark travels through thin walls. Every sigh or laugh or sob is shared. You know your neighbors' lives as if they were your own. Who coughs at night, whose child cries out from fever, whose footsteps come late from the yard. In this small, crowded space, your lives are all tangled together, and so are your words. Conversations start quietly, almost by accident. Someone asks after a cousin on another plantation, voice tight with worry and hope. Someone else mentions a runaway from last winter, spinning rumors that grow with every telling, how he crossed the river, how he vanished in the woods, how maybe, just maybe, he made it to freedom. Nobody says how unlikely that is. Nobody needs to. The stories matter more than the truth. You listen. Sometimes you answer. More often, you keep silent, letting the talk wash over you like warm water. There is comfort in the rhythm, in the way voices rise and fall, in the familiar patterns of complaint and memory. The same stories are told again and again about families sold away, about a neighbor who was kind, about a meal that was good, once long ago. In these stories, you all become more than what you are. You become a family, a history, a hope. There are warnings, too, slipped into the conversation like sharp stones. Someone whispers about a new overseer rumored to be crueler than the last. Someone talks of a sickness that has started in the children, or a rumor of a coming auction. These stories are not for comfort. They are a way of preparing yourselves, of bracing for whatever fresh blow tomorrow might bring. Sometimes you wish you did not know, but knowledge, even bitter knowledge, is a kind of armor. Children huddle close, listening with wide, hungry eyes. They learn early what can and cannot be spoken, what questions to ask, and which to leave unvoiced. When they speak, their words are sometimes strange. Questions about the stars, about the world outside the plantation, about freedom. You answer gently, knowing there are no good answers, only stories that keep them from breaking. There is laughter too, surprising and sharp. Someone tells a joke, an old one, about the master's horse or the preacher's wig. The laughter is quick, nervous, always chased by a glance at the door or a warning hiss. You all know the rules. No joy too loud, no comfort too obvious. Happiness is dangerous. Still, you laugh. You have to. Sometimes a song slips in, quiet and slow. Not the songs you might sing in the fields. Those are for keeping pace, for making the work just a little less crushing. The evening songs are different, softer, carrying the weight of longing and memory. A mother hums to her baby. A man sings an old tune from another life. Someone else fills in the words with humming, so low it is almost lost in the dark. These songs are not just for beauty, they are for holding on, for reminding you that your spirit has not been wholly crushed. In the corners, old folks tell tales that sound half real, half dream. Stories of Africa, of gods and monsters, of magic that lingers in bones and blood. They speak in half forgotten languages, and even when you do not understand the words, you feel them, deep, steady, defiant. It is a comfort to know that there was a world before this one, and maybe, if you are lucky, there will be a world after. Sometimes the conversation turns to prayer, not the prayers the master's preacher tries to teach you, all submission and waiting for heaven, but the older prayers, the ones that are half plea and half command. You pray for rain, for mercy, for strength, for just one day with less pain. You pray for the ones lost, for the ones sold, for the ones who will wake up tomorrow still able to stand. The prayers are quiet, but they run through the cabin like a secret river. You do not talk about escape, not really, not directly. You know what happens to those who speak the wrong dream too loudly. Instead, you share warnings and advice in code about the woods, the river, the master's dogs. You share what you know about the world outside, as little as that may be. It is a map drawn in words, a possibility you do not dare to hope for, not openly. The night grows later, and voices begin to fade. The youngest children are already asleep, curled in their mother's arms or sprawled on the boards. Some of the older ones doze off mid sentence, heads bobbing like tired birds. The stories wind down, the laughter softens, the prayers grow more urgent or more resigned. You lie on your patch of floor, listening to the fading voices, letting the last scraps of conversation settle in your bones. There is comfort here, however small, for these few hours. You remember you are not alone. You are part of a stubborn, suffering, dreaming people who have survived another day and who will, God willing, survive another. Sleep will come soon. Morning is never far away. But tonight, for a little while, you are allowed to be more than your pain. Sickness is a constant companion here, as familiar as hunger and as relentless as the overseer's whip. It moves through the cabins silently, settling in bodies already battered by work, cold, and grief. Sometimes you know it is coming, an ache in your back, a tickle in your throat, a cough that refuses to go away. Other times it falls on you all at once, a wave of fever that leaves you shaking and useless, sprawled on the hard floor with sweat pouring from your skin. There is no doctor for you. The big house has its own, of course, a man who visits when the master's children sneeze or the mistress has a headache. But out here, among the field hands, sickness is left to run its course. Remedies are made from roots and leaves gathered at the edge of the woods, from scraps of knowledge passed down in whispers, from mother to daughter, father to son. You have seen women boiling bark for tea, rubbing cuts with a greasy poultice, praying over a child's fever until morning. Sometimes these tricks work, sometimes they do not. Most times you survive in spite of them, not because of them. When you are sick, you do not rest. The field does not care about your cough, your fever, your swollen joints. The overseer cares even less. If you can stand, you work. If you cannot stand, you are left to lie in the dark, trembling and afraid, not only of the sickness, but of what will happen when you are missed in the morning roll call. You have seen what happens to those who do not answer when their name is called, the shout, the heavy boot at the door, the threat of punishment if you cannot rise. Sometimes you drag yourself up by sheer will, half blind, staggering through the day with your mind floating outside your body. The work is slower, the pain sharper, but you work. There is no alternative. You remember the faces of those who could not get up, how they grew quieter, smaller, shrinking into their corner of the cabin, their breath rattling in their chest, eyes hollow and watching. Sometimes they recover. More often, they fade away. The old ones are the first to go, their bodies simply giving out after too many seasons in the sun, too many winters without warmth. Children go too, swallowed by fever or a cough that grows deep and ragged. Their mothers wail in the dark, voices muffled in the crook of an arm or a threadbare blanket. You learn not to look, not to ask, not to let yourself feel too much. There is too much loss to carry, and the field will take you if you stumble. Wounds do not heal here. The cut from a cotton boll, the blister from a hoe, the gash from a nail in the barn, all of them linger red and swollen, sometimes oozing pus, always aching. Infection is just another word for waiting, for hoping that your body will fight back. Sometimes it does. Sometimes it does not. You have seen hands swell until the skin splits, feet so raw that every step is a fresh agony. You know what it means when someone hides their limp, keeps their hand in their pocket, pretends not to notice the blood on their shirt. To admit to weakness is to invite attention, and attention is always dangerous. The overseer does not believe in sickness. If you slow down, he assumes you are lazy. If you cough, he tells you to swallow it down and keep moving. If you fall, he curses you for making extra work. Once, you saw a man too sick to stand beaten until he vomited and passed out in the dust. No one helped him. No one dared. When he died a few days later, there was no ceremony, no marker, just a shallow grave and a warning to the rest. Exhaustion is a different kind of sickness. It settles in your bones, heavy and silent, eating away at your will. You wake tired, move tired, lie down tired. Sometimes you think you will simply fall asleep standing, or that your body will quit before your mind does. You have learned to push past exhaustion, to pretend it is not there, to keep moving until you are numb. At night, the tiredness is so deep it feels like drowning, pulling you under as soon as you close your eyes. There are days when you wonder how much longer you can keep going. How many more mornings you will answer the bell, how many more nights you will lie on the hard floor, muscles locked and aching. You know there are only two ways to leave this life, by being sold or by dying. Neither option brings relief. Both are just different shades of the same suffering. Still, you endure. You patch your wounds, you whisper your prayers, you accept the bitter taste of herbal teas and the rough hands that try to comfort you. You watch over the children, checking for fever, wiping their faces with a damp rag, telling them stories so they do not feel the darkness closing in. You share what little you have, an extra mouthful of water, a stolen moment of rest, a gentle hand when the pain is too much to bear. Sickness and exhaustion may be everywhere, but so is the stubbornness that keeps you alive. Each day you rise, even when your body screams to stay down. Each night you survive, even when the odds are against you. In this place where suffering is as common as breath, endurance is the only medicine you can rely on. You do not expect to live long, but as long as you can stand, as long as you can work, as long as you can remember the names and faces of those who came before you, you will endure. You will carry your sickness and your exhaustion with you into the next day, and the day after that, and the day after that, because there is no other choice. If pain is the language of the fields, loss is the language of the cabins. Nowhere is this more true than in the matter of family. You do not own your days or your labor, but you own even less when it comes to the people you love. Every morning when you wake, every night when you count heads in the dark, there is the silent, choking question: who will be here tomorrow? Will the people you call family still be lying next to you, or will they be gone, vanished as suddenly and absolutely as a candle blown out by the wind? Family is a word you clutch tight, but it is a fragile thing here, a piece of thread stretched thin over the emptiness that threatens to swallow you whole. You learn early not to trust in permanence. A mother can be taken from her children on the whim of a master who wants to settle a debt. A husband can be sold off for being too strong, too clever, too much trouble. A child can disappear before dawn, traded away before the rooster crows, bundled onto a cart, with only the thin hope that somewhere, in some distant field, they will survive. It is not a question of if you will lose someone, but when. The threat hovers over every meal, every whispered conversation, every moment of rare stolen joy. You have seen mothers weep silently as their children are led away, fathers forced to look down at the ground as their wives are sold to men who do not even know their names. You have seen siblings torn apart, their hands reaching for each other until the last possible second, their cries swallowed by the sounds of the auction, the crack of the overseer's voice. There are days when the cabins are thick with rumors of a trader coming, of a new master visiting, of debts that need paying, or harvests that fell short. The older women listen closely, piecing together clues from a glance, a hurried conversation, the way the master's wife counts heads from the porch. You learn to read danger in the small things. A trunk loaded onto a wagon, a horse saddled at dusk, the sudden silence when the master comes to the cabins at night. You try to guard your heart, to love carefully, to keep your feelings stay hidden deep inside where no one can reach them. You tell yourself that you must be strong for those who remain, that you cannot afford to break when others need you. But the truth is, no matter how much you prepare, loss always takes you by surprise. One moment you are a family, the next you are scattered pieces, trying desperately to fit together again in new shapes, with new gaps that never quite heal. Sometimes you hear stories told in whispers, traded in the night, of families who managed to stay together, who bargained and begged, who somehow escaped the attention of the trader or the wrath of the master. These stories are rare, and they always feel like lies. You listen anyway, because even a lie can be a kind of comfort when the truth is too much to bear. You live with the constant fear that your turn will come, that your child will be sold, that your wife or husband will vanish, that you will wake one morning to an empty patch of floor. You learn to savor the small moments, a hand to hold at the end of the day, a quiet word over a bowl of grits, the feel of a child's head resting on your shoulder. You learn to memorize voices, faces, the way someone laughs or hums a song. These memories become treasures, hoarded against the certainty of loss. Sometimes, the master uses the threat of separation as a weapon. If someone disobeys, if someone tries to run, the punishment is not just pain, but division. A mother told she will never see her children again unless she begs for forgiveness. A husband forced to watch as his wife is sent away to another plantation. The pain of the whip is sharp, but the pain of being torn from your family is endless, a wound that never closes, a sorrow that lives in your bones. You try not to let the children see your fear, but they know. Children always know. They ask you quietly, late at night, if you will be there in the morning. You tell them yes, even when you are not sure. You promise things you cannot control because it is better to offer hope than to surrender to despair. But you know that one day, sooner or later, you may have to break that promise. In rare moments of luck, Families are allowed to visit across plantations, an afternoon spent in a rush of stories and tears, an hour to remember what togetherness feels like before the sun sets and everyone is sent back to their separate corners of suffering. Even these visits are bittersweet, reminders of everything you have lost and everything you still stand to lose. You learn to build family out of what you have left. Neighbors become cousins, friends become brothers and sisters. You gather the lonely, the orphaned, the cast off, and you make new bonds in the shadow of the old ones. The ties are not as strong, but they are real. They are what you have. The threat of losing family hangs over every action, every word, every breath. It is a knife always at your throat, a reminder that nothing is truly yours, not your labor, not your rest, not even your love. And yet, in spite of everything, you keep loving, you keep hoping, you keep holding on to the people beside you for as long as you can with all the strength you have left. And in this act, this stubborn refusal to give up on each other, you find the smallest sliver of freedom. Night falls on the plantation like a heavy curtain, and you might hope, just for a moment, that darkness will bring peace. But the horrors of the night are their own kind of torment. Quieter sometimes, but no less real, no less cruel than the sun baked labor of the fields. In the dark, the world shrinks down to a single room, a handful of bodies pressed together for warmth, and the steady throb of fear that nothing good happens after the sun sets. You lie on your corner of the floor, eyes wide open, listening. The sounds are different now. The slow breaths of sleeping children, the restless shifts of the old and wounded, the distant hollow call of a night bird. Every creak of the floorboards or brush of wind against the wall sounds like a warning. You have learned to tell the difference between harmless noises and the footsteps that mean danger is near. Sometimes it is the overseer, returning after dark for reasons no one ever questions aloud. Sometimes it is the master himself, moving through the cabins like a ghost with a candle and a purpose. He is not supposed to come here, not supposed to enter the spaces where you cling to what little dignity you have left. But rules are for other people. He comes when he pleases, and when he does, everyone holds their breath. You have seen it before, the way the door opens and the light spills in, the way everyone suddenly becomes smaller, quieter, hoping not to be noticed. If the master's eyes settle on you or someone you love, there is nothing you can do but pray, silently and desperately, that tonight is not the night he takes an interest. Sometimes he wants a strong back to help in the barn, or a quick pair of hands for some errand. Sometimes it is worse. The women know this fear more than anyone. You have seen the way they flinch at footsteps, the way they tuck their children closer, the way their voices fall silent when the night is especially quiet. The master's visit can mean anything, from a whispered threat to a violation so unspeakable you do not have words for it. And in the morning, nothing is said. The pain becomes part of the fabric of the day, woven into every gesture, every silence. There are other dangers too. Sometimes it is drunken white men from the neighboring farms looking for a cruel kind of amusement, shouting threats as they stagger past the cabins. Sometimes it is dogs let loose by the overseer to prowl between the rows and remind you what happens if you try to run. Sometimes it is just the knowledge that there are no walls thick enough to keep out every kind of harm. When the night is quiet, your fears grow louder. You remember the faces of those who were taken after dark, those who never came back. You wonder where they are, buried in shallow graves behind the woods, sold to another plantation, locked away in punishment. You turn these questions over and over in your mind, trying to make sense of a world that refuses to give answers. Sleep is not a comfort. When it comes, it brings dreams twisted by worry, visions of running through endless fields, chased by faceless men, of searching for lost children who never call back, of hands reaching out for you in the dark, always just out of reach. Sometimes you wake up gasping, the echo of a scream still stuck in your throat, only to realize that it was not your voice you heard. It was someone else's, from another cabin, another nightmare made real. Children learn the dangers of night early. You have seen little ones clutching their mothers, trying to keep from crying out, knowing that noise can bring punishment. They learn to hide, to make themselves small, to disappear when the wrong eyes turn their way. Childhood here is not a time for innocence, but for lessons in survival. Sometimes even the grown men break. You have heard it, the shuddering sobs in the dark, the whispered prayers for a quick death or for a morning that never comes. The strongest men you know become shadows at night, haunted by the fear of what might be taken from them while the rest of the world sleeps. You try to give comfort in small ways, a hand on a shoulder, a story told in a whisper, a promise to stay awake a little longer and keep watch. These things do not make the fear go away, but they remind you that you are not alone, that there are others enduring the same misery, the same sleeplessness, the same dread. On rare nights, when the moon is high and the air is thick with the scent of magnolia and misery, you hear something strange, a song carried softly from one cabin to the next, or a quiet, determined prayer. It is not defiance, not really. It is a reminder that you are still here, that the horrors of the night have not swallowed you whole. And when the first faint light appears at the window, you breathe a little easier. Another night survived, another dawn to face. But you know, even as the sun rises and the overseer's bell begins its call, that the horrors of the night will return as soon as darkness falls. They are patient, they are inevitable. You gather your courage from the scraps left over. You rise, not because you are rested, but because you must. Here, in the shadow world between dreams and waking, survival means never letting the night win. Faith is what you cling to when nothing else is yours. On the plantation, belief is not a Sunday affair or a polished speech in a whitewashed church. Faith is a private matter, a living thing stitched together from scraps of memory, stories whispered in the night, and a stubborn refusal to let go of hope, even when hope seems ridiculous. The master's preacher comes sometimes holding a fat book, talking about patience, about heaven, about obey your earthly masters. You have learned to nod, to sing along, to keep your thoughts inside where no one can reach them. His God is a white man's God who promises reward after death and silence until then. You have seen what happens when someone questions the preacher: extra chores, a hard stare, the threat of the whip. So you bow your head, and inside you laugh at his empty words. But when the white men are gone, your real faith comes out, the kind that cannot be tamed or translated. You keep it in songs passed down from your grandmother, in stories about the old country, in whispered prayers that blend the names of Jesus, ancestors, and spirits the Master has never heard of. At night, when the candle gutters and the wind prowls around the cabin, you find yourself reaching for something older and wilder than anything in the preacher's book. You pray for rain and for mercy, for the safe return of a lost child, for the pain in your joints to ease before dawn. Sometimes, when the sickness lingers or the whip has cut deep, you pray for death, but even then, your prayers are tangled with hope: a hope for freedom, for justice, for reunion with those already gone. Your faith is a patchwork, sewn from every culture and memory that survived the crossing, a private church where suffering does not mean surrender. Superstitions grow here as thick as weeds. You carry talismans: a smooth stone in your pocket, a dried root tied with string, a scrap of blue cloth to keep away the evil eye. You spit on the ground to ward off bad luck, draw secret signs in the dust with your toe, whisper charms before you leave the cabin at dawn. Some say you must never whistle at night, or the devil will come. Others believe a dream of water means a journey, and a bird tapping at the window is a sign of death. These things sound foolish to the Master, but to you, they are as real as the blisters on your hands. There is comfort in rituals, even small ones. Washing your hands a certain way before sleep, knocking on wood before speaking a loved one's name, hiding a baby's hair under the hearth to keep the child safe. You tell yourself these acts matter because if you let yourself believe in chance, in a world with no order or magic, the darkness becomes too much. Superstition is a way of making sense of senselessness, of holding on to agency when everything else has been taken. Stories and faith mix until you can hardly tell them apart. You remember tales of the old gods, of clever animals, of trickster spirits who help the weak and punish the cruel. In these stories, a slave outwits the master, a lost woman is led home by a spirit in the shape of a bird, a child is protected by a song that only their grandmother remembers. The old folks tell these stories to the young, and the children believe them because they must. Sometimes you think you believe them too. Even in the field, faith follows you. When you work under the burning sun, you sing songs of deliverance, of Moses and Egypt, of the river that parts for the faithful. Sometimes you see the overseer listening, frowning, trying to decide if your song is prayer or rebellion. The truth is, it is both. Every note is a prayer for endurance and a quiet promise that you will survive, no matter what he does. There are nights when someone falls ill, and the women gather with bowls of water and handfuls of dried herbs, chanting under their breath, calling on ancestors whose names are never spoken outside the cabin. You have seen people recover when all hope was lost, and you have seen others die even after the strongest prayers. Faith is not a contract, it is a comfort, a mystery, a way to push back against the emptiness. Some say dreams are messages from the dead, from God, from your own secret self. You learn to listen closely to the stories told in sleep, to look for warnings and signs, to change your path if a dream feels heavy with meaning. You never mock a dreamer, never dismiss a vision, never forget the little superstitions that have kept your people alive through worse than this. You do not believe in the same heaven as the Master, but you believe in something. Maybe it is justice, coming slow but sure. Maybe it is the spirits of the woods, watching over those who dare to run. Maybe it is only the strength to rise again when every muscle begs to stay down. Whatever it is, you hold on tight, because here, faith and superstition are all you have that cannot be taken away. And so, every night, before sleep or terror or exhaustion claims you, you whisper your prayer, touch your talisman, and believe. Because even the smallest shred of belief can be a lifeline in a world built on taking. You remember being a child, though sometimes the memory feels like it belongs to someone else. A ghost you carry, lighter than air but heavier than sorrow. Childhood on the plantation is a short, slippery thing. There is no time to linger, no room for innocence. From your earliest days, you learn that your body is not your own. Your laughter is rationed, and your future is already spoken for by someone else. Your first lessons come not from books, but from the sharp voices of adults, the warnings wrapped in their touch. Keep your head down. Do not speak unless asked. Watch the master's face, not his words. These are the rules that matter, the rules that might save you from the whip, the stock, or a sudden trip to another plantation. You are taught to move quickly, to listen for the bell, to recognize the subtle signs of danger, the way the overseer's boots sound on the path, the shadows falling across the cabin door. There are games, of course, but even play is shaped by fear. You race between cabins, dodging mud puddles and each other, but the laughter always carries a nervous edge. The older children keep watch, warning when someone from the big house draws near. If the master's wife sees you resting, there will be scolding. If the overseer sees you running too freely, there will be punishment. Even a simple game of hide and seek can end in tears if you hide too well or come out at the wrong time. From the moment you can walk, you are given chores. The smallest ones carry water or sweep the cabins, pluck worms from the garden, or fan babies through the heat. As soon as your hands are big enough, you join the others in the fields, picking weeds or gathering scraps of cotton dropped by faster, stronger hands. Your back aches, your fingers blister, but you are proud to help, even as you envy the freedom of the birds overhead. You watch the adults and learn the secrets they cannot say out loud. How to slip food from the cookhouse, how to quiet a crying baby before the master's wife complains, how to share a glance that means run or hide or not today. You learn early that trust is currency, that secrets are power, and that every kindness is an act of rebellion. The stories the elders tell are your inheritance, passed down at night, half in whispers, half in dreams. You listen for clues about a world before this one, about names and places you are never allowed to speak in daylight. Your world is small, rows of cotton, narrow paths between cabins, the muddy ditch where you can catch a frog or see your face in the water. Still, you dream big dreams. Sometimes you talk with other children about freedom, about a life where no one tells you when to wake or sleep, where food is plentiful and the sun is only warm, never cruel. You know these dreams are dangerous, but they grow anyway, as wild as the weeds between the rows. You see things you should not have to see. The sorrow in your mother's eyes when the master talks about selling someone, the bruises on your father's back, the swollen hands of your sister, the cough that will not leave your brother's chest. You hear the prayers at night, the angry mutterings in the morning, the silence that settles after bad news. You learn to mourn quietly, to keep your questions hidden, to swallow your pain with the rest of your dinner. Sometimes you are witness to the cruelty of the world. You see a child punished for dropping a bucket, a friend taken away in a wagon and never returned. You hear stories about mothers and fathers separated, about babies sold before they even learn to speak. You know that love is a risk, that attachment is a luxury, but you love anyway, fiercely, and without apology. If you are lucky, you find small joys, the sweetness of stolen fruit, the cool mud between your toes, the way your friend's laughter sounds in the dark when the overseer is far away. You make up games from nothing, songs from thin air, hope from less than that. You cling to every scrap of kindness, every soft word, every gentle hand. The adults try to protect you, but they cannot shield you from the truth. You are property. You can be sold, traded, beaten, or starved. Your future is not yours, and your name is written in someone else's ledger. You grow up fast, your childhood burning away like mist in the morning sun. Yet, somehow, you endure. You learn to be clever, to listen more than you speak, to find joy in small victories, a successful hiding place, a game played without interruption, a moment of peace beneath a tree. You hold on to your dreams, stubborn and bright, even when the world tries to crush them. You know, deep down, that you will soon be grown, that the world will expect you to work as hard and suffer as much as your parents. But for now, you are a child, and even if it lasts only a heartbeat, you claim it as your own. And that, in a place where nothing belongs to you, is a kind of freedom. Joy is not forbidden on the plantation, but it is rare and fragile, something you learn to recognize only by how quickly it vanishes. You do not dare to trust in it, not fully. You savor it in stolen moments, always half expecting that the overseer's shadow or the master's angry voice will sweep it away. Still, you learn to chase joy where you can, to hold tight to scraps of happiness before they are gone. Sometimes joy is as simple as a breeze, cool and unexpected, rustling through the cotton at midday. For a moment, the sweat on your back feels less like a punishment, the sun less like a threat. You close your eyes and pretend you are somewhere else, By a river, maybe, or under a tree that belongs to no one. A breath of wind can feel like a miracle when your whole life is spent under the weight of heat and order. Music is another kind of joy, though it hides itself carefully. A quiet hum while you bend over the plants. A rhythm tapped with a stick on a water barrel, soft enough not to draw attention. Some evenings, when the risk feels worth it, you and the others make a song from nothing, hands clapping, feet stomping, voices weaving together in a harmony as old as pain itself. These are not songs of triumph, but of survival, each note carrying hope through the cracks in the cabin walls. You find joy in laughter, sharp and sudden, sometimes even at your own expense. A joke about the overseer's strut, a story about the master's foolish dog, a memory of something silly from a time before the field became your world. Laughter is not safe here, not if it is too loud or too frequent, but it is necessary. It shakes loose the bitterness, reminds you that you are still human, still able to feel more than just fear and exhaustion. There is joy in small victories, managing to save a crumb of bread for a child, trading a handful of beans for a splinter of soap, outwitting a rat in the grain barrel, catching a fish in the muddy creek, slipping a sweet potato from the master's garden when no one is watching. These moments do not last, but they fill you up in ways that hunger cannot touch. On rare nights, when the overseer's mood is easy and the master is away, there is time for dance. The old folks beat out a rhythm on the floor, and the young ones spin and shuffle, turning the cabin into a secret place of warmth and laughter. Children clap, babies sway on their mother's hips, and for a little while you remember what it is to move for pleasure, not for work. You remember that your body belongs to you, if only for the length of a song. Friendship, too, is a kind of joy, though it is laced with risk. You make friends among the other field hands, bonds forged in shared hardship and quiet defiance. You share secrets in the rows, swap stories while hauling water, look out for one another when the overseer's back is turned. You learn to trust, just enough to survive, just enough to feel a little less alone. Sometimes, the greatest joy comes from caring for others. You find a comb and untangle a child's hair, sing a soft tune to soothe a restless sleeper, share a bit of cloth to bandage a blistered foot. These gestures do not change your world, but they change the moment, turning suffering into something you face together. Nature offers its own gifts. The stars at night, brilliant and cold above the cabin roof, make you feel small but not invisible. Fireflies gather in the grass, lighting up the dusk with a magic the master cannot touch. The call of an owl, the distant howl of a wolf, the sight of a rabbit darting through the rows. These things remind you there is still a world beyond the plantation, a world where you might one day be free. There are rare days of rest when the work is paused for a holiday or a visit from the preacher. The meals are not much better, but you linger longer over them, talking quietly, remembering old recipes, trading dreams for what you would cook if you could. You tell stories, play games with the children, invent holidays out of nothing at all. It is a taste of a life you might have lived if you had been born somewhere else. And sometimes joy comes in dreaming, in the small hours of the night, when you are not too tired or too frightened to sleep. You dream of other places, other names, other lives. You wake with a memory of running free, of singing in a place where no one is watching, of holding your children close without fear. These dreams are dangerous, but they are also precious, carried with you into the day as a secret blessing. You know, better than anyone, that joy is a dangerous thing. The master does not like to see you happy. The overseer suspects laughter of hiding rebellion, but you cannot help yourself. You gather joy in secret, share it in whispers, plant it in the hearts of your children like a seed that might one day grow into something bigger than hope. Because in a world built to keep you small and silent, every moment of joy is a tiny, shining act of resistance. Time moves differently on the plantation. It stretches and snaps, then starts all over again, like a rope that never breaks, but frays a little more with every season. You do not mark years by calendars. There are no holidays to circle, no birthdays to celebrate, no anniversaries worth remembering. Instead, your life is measured in harvests, in the scars on your hands, in the faces that vanish from the cabins and never return. The years crawl when you are young, each day an endless repetition of pain and obedience. You think you will never grow up, never be free of the overseer's voice or the master's shadow. But then, suddenly, you are older. Your back has a permanent ache. Your hands are thick with callus. Your hair has gone gray in streaks, not from age alone, but from sun and worry and grief. You watch the people around you change. Children you rocked to sleep are now working the rows beside you. Friends who once made you laugh grow silent and hunched, their steps slow and careful, their eyes wary. Some simply disappear. A sale, a sickness, a beating that was one too many. The cabins empty and refill. The stories change a little. The grief never does. You learn not to ask questions, but you always notice who is missing. There are seasons when you almost forget yourself, when your days blur into a single, grinding cycle of wake, work, collapse, repeat. You have dreams, strange ones, where you are someone else, living some other life. But in the morning, it is always the same. The sound of the bell, the taste of stale bread, the bite of the hoe handle in your palm. The years carve themselves into your body. Your teeth loosen and fall out long before you are old. Your vision dims from staring too long into sun and dust. Your knees crack, your shoulders stiffen, your scars pile up one on top of the other until you hardly remember a time before you hurt. Some of the elders say that few live to see 50. The field is no place for old bones. The lucky are given lighter chores or are allowed to sit on the porch of the cabins, shelling peas or minding children. The unlucky keep working until their bodies simply give out. With time comes a certain numbness. You no longer flinch at the overseer's bark, no longer dream of rescue. You become, in a way, invisible to yourself, just another figure bent in the row, just another set of hands to keep the cotton growing. It is easier that way, most days. Easier than remembering what you have lost or what you once hoped for. But even in the numbness, there are moments that cut through. The birth of a child, a momentary surge of hope, quickly followed by dread for what the world will do to them. The death of a friend, the sharp emptiness that follows, the brief, precious visits from family members who have survived on other plantations. Each reunion is a miracle, each parting a fresh wound. The years bring changes, but not all are bad. You become wise in the ways of survival, how to stretch a meal, how to soothe a fever, how to hide your feelings when the master is near. You grow skilled at reading people, sensing danger, seeing through the overseer's threats. Your body may grow weaker, but your mind sharpens. You find ways to hold on, to pass down stories and warnings, to keep something alive that cannot be picked or whipped or sold. You watch the young ones struggle, and you remember yourself at their age, how quickly hope was beaten out, how hard it was to believe in a world outside the fields. Sometimes you try to teach them what you know, how to find the cool spot in the shade, how to hide a bruise, how to spot the signs of a coming storm. You do what you can, but you know the world will teach them harder lessons than you ever could. Time, for you, is not a gift. It is not something to be cherished or celebrated. It is only a test, one you never asked for, one you cannot win, one you survive only by growing harder, quieter, smaller. Yet you find small comforts in routine, the same song at dusk, the same seat in the cabin, the same view of the fields as the sun rises. These things anchor you, keep you from floating away on a tide of memory and sorrow. Sometimes, in the cool of the evening, you look up at the stars and let yourself wonder, how many more years will this go on? Will you live to see freedom? Will your children? Or is the only real escape the slow forgetting that comes with age and pain? Still, you rise each day. Still, you work. Still, you find moments of stubborn pride when you help someone weaker, when you remember a joke, when you wake up one more time in a world that wants you gone. The years may be long and cruel, but you outlast them, one aching step at a time. And in the end, perhaps, that endurance is its own quiet kind of rebellion. You are still here. You have not disappeared. There are days, in the long, slow march of seasons, when you cannot see the edge of anything. The field stretches forever, the sky just as endless, the pain in your back a line without horizon. Some mornings you wake and forget what year it is, or how long it has been since you saw a loved one's face, or what it might feel like to live another kind of life. The world has shrunk down to a patch of dirt and a corner of a cabin and the ache in your bones. The future has vanished into the same fog that swallows the sunrise. You have watched hope come and go. At times, it burned bright, a story whispered after dark, a rumor that freedom armies were marching from the north or that laws were changing in cities with names you only half believe in. You saw hope in the faces of children born ever you, who looked at the master with questions in their eyes, who dared to dream of learning to read, of leaving these fields behind. But hope is dangerous here. It is a fever, a rash, a fire that can bring down punishment as easily as it brings joy. You have learned to hold it close, let it flicker only when no one is watching, lest the overseer or the world stamp it out. The truth is, you do not see an end, not for yourself, not for most of the people you love. The system is bigger than any one person, older than any memory you can name. The plantation rolls on, swallowing the lives of your parents, your children, their children in turn. You have seen men try to break free, to escape across the river or into the woods, only to be dragged back, bruised and broken, a warning to all who remain. You have seen families split and scattered, the names of the lost whispered like prayers, the empty spaces in the cabin multiplying with each year. The field does not change, the overseer does not change. The bell rings in the morning, and you rise. You work, you sweat, you bleed, you kneel. In the evening, you crawl back to your place in the darkness, count the bodies beside you, and wonder who will be missing tomorrow. You do not count days, you do not keep a calendar. You measure time by what has been taken from you and by what little you can still hold on to. There are stories, even so, that slip through the cracks, tales of uprisings, of freedom gained at a terrible price, of lives rebuilt somewhere beyond the reach of the master. Sometimes these stories are true. Mostly they are hope disguised as memory. They are repeated all the same, because to give up on them would be to let the darkness win completely. You do not expect to be free, but you expect stubbornly that someone will be one day. You wonder, in quiet moments, what freedom would even mean after all this. Could you walk where you wished, eat when you were hungry, rest when you were tired? Could you trust your own laughter? Would you know what to do with your hands if they were not always busy with someone else's work? You do not have answers. You do not dare to hope for too much. But you hold the question close because even a question is better than nothing at all. The world of the big house, of the master and his family, drifts by like a shadow play on the wall. You see them sometimes, at parties in new clothes, laughing and eating things you have never tasted. You are invisible to them, but you see them more clearly than they could ever see you. You know what they fear and what they want. You know how little you mean to them and how much they depend on you, though they will never admit it. You have learned to take a grim, silent satisfaction in their blindness, and so you survive. That is your only victory, the thing they cannot take from you, no matter how many years go by, no matter how many names are crossed from the ledger. You wake up, you work, you care for those around you, you endure. The end is not in sight, but you keep moving forward all the same, one day at a time. In your dreams, you sometimes see yourself walking away from the field. No one stops you. The overseer is gone. The master's house is empty. The gate is wide open. The world beyond is quiet, green, full of strange birds and tall grass. You walk and walk until you cannot hear the bell, cannot see the cotton, cannot remember what it was to be afraid. When you wake, you are still here, but the dream stays with you, a small, sharp promise that things might be different somewhere, someday. Until then, you keep going. You hold onto the fragments of joy and kinship, the flashes of music and kindness that survive even in this place. You become expert at endurance, at patience, at living with your eyes half closed against the glare of an endless present. You do not see an end, but you know in your bones that there is more to life than this. And as long as you know that, however quietly, however secretly, you are not truly beaten.